And now the last question is, typically how far have students traveled from home? Use some of your work from numbers 1 through 4 to support your answer. All right, so we haven't formally talked about how to summarize this all together. So you're gonna have some different ways of interpreting this, but here's what I would probably say about it. When I say typical, I mean what's what most people have traveled, or what's kind of like the middle amount of people that we have and how far they've traveled. And so the best thing I think to look at, I actually like the 5-number summary. And I think about the typical kind of being this interquartile range amount. So kind of between the 200 and the 500 is a good amount. And the reason why I think that's good is because another way of interpreting typical is to think about what the mean is and what the median is and what the mode is, because those are measures of center. And notice that our mean is in that range, 442.5. Notice that our mode is in that range as well. It's the top of the range, but it is mode. And our median is obviously in that range because it's one of the numbers. And then if we look at our dot plot here, and we're thinking about 200 to 500, we can see that's going to be this amount right here. Look at all the dots that are in that 200 to 500 range. Most of the dots are in that range right there between 200 and 500. If we look at the histogram, we can see, all right, although the histogram goes up to 600, you can see almost all the information is in those first couple. So we can factor that in. And then in the box plot, we can see that actually 200 to 500 is again in this middle range right here. So there's a lot of data there to help us support that answer. So let's say 200 miles to 500 miles is typical because this is our Q3 minus Q1, or interquartile range, which is the middle. Remember, the interquartile range is essentially the middle 50% of the data. The mean, what we said is 442.5, right? So yeah, the mean is 442.5. Mean is 442.5. The median is 300. All right, so the median was 300, and then the mode was 500. Which are all in that 200 to 500, let's say interquartile range as well. Interquartile range, IQR as well. This can also be seen in the distribution graphs, where most of the data is centered in the dot plot histogram and box plot. All right, so that might be more than you want to write, but that does kind of give you lots of ideas for some things that I would expect to be referenced. When we get to our formatives and our summatives, and you have to do some interpretation, the separation between those IB scores that are in that 3-4 range to get up to that 5-6 range to get up to that 7-8 range, which is, really that 5-6-7 is where we really want to be, is going to be in your ability to interpret and write some information about the math that you are doing, to explain it, to describe it, to discuss it, and to use some of this mathematical terminology within that. Now, that is a hard thing to do. That's something that you have to kind of build and increase your skill on. But it's going to be more than just coming up with the answers for some of the numbers. To really just come up with these numbers is one thing. That gets you into that 3-4 range, probably, maybe into a 5 range. But to get even higher than that, we really also need to be doing some explaining and discussing and describing to interpret the information that we have. So the more practice we do with that and the more seriously we take it, the better we're going to be.